Good afternoon. Those who are in the Delmar Center Hall, those on Zoom right now and later on YouTube. My name is Linda McCabe. I am the chair of the Sea Ranch Forum. Today, our topic is about KGUA radio, and we'll be hearing from four wonderful ladies here about the history of KGUA and its future. And I will let Leanne Lindsay, who I have known for, I don't know, over 15 years, take over. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for joining us. I'm Leanne Lindsay, and with me is Peggy Berryhill, founder, along with her partner Susan Ruschmeyer and Sevi Cardosi. Sevi Cardosi is the new director of programming and production, and I'm the new GM, and Peggy's the president of NMRC. NMRC is the nonprofit. KGUA is a project of NMRC, and Susan is the CFO. To get into our Hail Mary plan of how we plan to save this station by the end of the year, first I want to play just a recent interview that I did with George Callis of the Sea Ranch Life, and then we'll get into a recap and expansion on the topics. So I'm going to share screen now and we'll get underway with that. And this is about KGUA 88.3 FM, a totally independent public media station.
Hi, folks. Today, This Sea Ranch Life is bringing one of our favorite people, Leanne Lindsay, to tell us some really late-breaking, fascinating news about our local radio station, KGUA. Leanne, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me here today, George. I really appreciate it.
Give us a quick history of the station.
Well, KGUA 88.3 FM public radio is located in the Cypress Village, Gualala, and streams along the Mendocino and Sonoma coasts. That we call that the terrestrial signal that gets in your cars or your home radios, but it's also online. We stream around the world at kgua.org on an app that I helped develop with a couple of software companies, and you can download to any digital device. Went on air about 13 years ago. It's a project of the Native Media Resource Center that was founded by Peggy Berryhill and Susan Ruschmeyer. And so it is a project of a 501c3 nonprofit. And then they built a 103-foot tower up above Anchor Bay, the most powerful signal in this area from any other radio station here. And the key difference from most public radio stations too is that this one is completely independent. It is not an NPR station. We're not getting any grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting either. We're completely dependent upon listeners and sponsors to either be underwriter sponsorships or donors. After moving here to the Sea Ranch, where my home is here, back in 2017, and I went to one of the fundraisers Margie Hagan had at her house, and that's where I met Peggy and Susan. So I started right the next, few days at January, and I've done everything at the station that you can just about imagine doing, from production, programming, scheduling, editing, engineering, remote control of the station, developing software, sales and marketing. That's a lot of my background from the tech industry.
Now, some changes are happening at KGUA, and you're a big part of that, and that the management of the station is transitioning. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. And one thing I wanted to say about my particular background is that not only do I have radio experience from my early years in Aspen, Colorado's, as an announcer and a commercial producer and a TV film editor. But then I went into the tech industry where I did a lot of sales, marketing, strategic alliances, and
Okay.
venture capital fundraising. So I've kind of got that leg in both world of creative and business. And when I helped the station over the last many years, a lot of those skills came into play. And then the station went up for sale for the past year because Peggy and Susan wanted to have a roadmap for retirement. Even though Peggy wants to stay engaged, if it can continue, but they just didn't find a serious enough buyer.
Mhm.
And we went through several months of trying to figure out how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? We talked to KZYX, that didn't quite work out. And we didn't just want it to be a repeater and then no coverage here on our coast, no local
Mm, mhm.
representation, particularly during emergencies. So we decided and came up with a plan. I just went to Peggy and Susan and said, we can't close the doors at the end of May, which is what about happened. So
Yeah.
there was the crux. And we had to figure a plan. And I didn't have the means or wherewithal running my own production company, Sea Storm Studios, producing a big documentary, how I was going to also take on the whole thing, create a nonprofit that would acquire KGUA. So I said, well, look, if I can get a roadmap myself to acquire the station, here's
Mhm.
what I could do. I could come on during a period of time in management to help you and all of us see if we can't make this station sustainable, which is
Mhm.
profitable in business terms. It's making enough money to pay the bills and pay key staff, maybe a couple
Right.
of key staff and a couple of part-timers. That has to be baked in because KZYX does, other public radio stations do. We just never have. It's always
Right.
volunteer. So my job now, since I've done this before with lots of companies, helping them make a profit, generate revenues, let's see if I can do that with this public radio station that's independent. If we can achieve that goal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, then I can use a nonprofit I have created that's producing one of the new podcasts that's we're doing as a live morning show now.
Mhm.
That then that nonprofit will acquire the FCC license and the depreciated equipment. Now they'll
Uh-huh.
keep the tower that's under Native Media Resource Center, but KGUA would then, if it becomes mine at the end of the year, going into January 1, then I'd be leasing from the tower from them.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
that's in a nutshell. So I can go into detail on some of those plans, but I asked Peggy and Susan to please stay on to do the administrative core of things. And
Right.
Peggy still wants to stay on with the writers program on Monday mornings, as well as her own show, Peggy's Place,
Hey,
on
you bet.
Tuesdays.
You
There
bet.
you go.
We couldn't get along without Peggy's place at least some of the time, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the most important functions of the station is what happens when we have local emergencies, and what role does a radio station like KGUA play in that?
You hit on the main thing that compelled me to do something because I'm the one with the most skills to try to help save the station. But want to save it more than anything because so many other people do, is that it is a critical component of our first responder network during emergencies.
Okay.
This radio signal comes from a tower that's not only 103-foot tall, broadcasting at 2,500 watts, but it also has all the PG&E equipment on it. So when everything else goes down, guess how the linemen, all the women and men that work with PG&E to help battle fires or floods or earthquakes,
Hmm.
that's how they communicate, is off of our tower.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
It is critical. I mean, that is how you keep communications going. We come together during fires and floods and cyclone bomb storm,
Yeah.
bomb storms. And
Right.
we have a lot of people who descend upon the station and we make phone calls. We are talking to everybody we can. They compile it into lists. We go on air, we announce all the information, and people will tell us during the emergencies and afterwards what a lifeline this station was to
Yeah.
them. Some people saying, the AT&T tower went down during the fires that were around Healdsburg that time, and there was the power shut off, and we didn't have any way to know what was going on unless we went to our car on the top of the hour and turned your radio on and
Right.
listened. That it really is, for our remote communities, so important. And we have talked with Sonoma County, and we'll talk to Mendocino County because they do have budgets for emergency preparedness, and we already have conversations going. And hopefully within a short period of time, we'll be able to get some funding in from them, which will help us be
Right.
so much more prepared with procedures in place, all the things that we need to do. But it takes money and it takes people who want to dedicate their time. So
Right.
in plan, I asked Sevi Cardosi to come in with me, another longtime volunteer. She has created a great new business for our community called the North Coast Link. And it's like the blue book for online, but much more expanded. Since we don't have that resource anymore, this has what to do, where to go, who people are, how to contact, where the services are. And that is such a good component combination when we put in her business with my production business, C Storm Studios and KGUA. We're all stronger together, and
Okay.
we have 6 months timeline right now that we've been given by NMRC to make this happen, to make the station sustainable, which is
Right.
why we are working hard around the clock to figure the plans of how we do this. Emergency funding is the big first one.
Yeah.
And the second, we are working on new materials, pitch materials, so that we can go outside of our area and also bring in a lot of the bigger uh, businesses and sponsors and underwriters,
Mhm.
bigger foundations. And to do a lot of that, we knew that we had to really expand our reach. And one way we're doing that is through our new podcast. So the live shows and pre-recorded shows that we're doing now, we're going to edit them into podcast format, and those will go out on a distribution platform that goes out to wherever people get podcasts.
So I can listen to a radio program long after it's aired.
We have built up a great SoundCloud channel over the years, and
Yeah.
people have been listening to that. And that is interesting because if you look at the statistics, every day there's new listeners or people are sharing the shows. So we've got a great YouTube channel, a great SoundCloud channel, and those statistics keep improving
Right.
too. The Ocean Life Symposium, people still keep listening to that and sharing it,
Yeah.
and they put it on their websites, and then of course then people listen to the on their websites, and it comes back to our statistics on YouTube. However, right now, since we're working on these podcasts, which will be much more formatted in the podcast style, that we're holding off from doing uploading to SoundCloud or YouTube until we drop it in September, and then it will go out to all podcast platforms. So that's the
Great.
plan.
What needs to happen for KGUA to remain financially sustainable?
No matter how great our programming might be and what we're working on doing all these great new shows for our morning and afternoon shows, and we are talk and we are music, we are entertainment station. We're not just music, we're not just talk. It's a mix of all of those, and it reaches a broad diversity in our community from Latino, Native American, uh, European, you name it. We try to reach out to all the diverse people in our communities. However, no matter how great that is, and we have worked hard on that over the years, and I've been a big part of that with Peggy, and now Sebi is taken over as director of programming and production. But the key is going to be whether or not we can keep this station going to reach that monthly budget, to have money in the bank so we're not stressing out every month of whether or not we're going to be able to pay our bills. And for the first time, pay staff so that we're there on a regular
Mm.
basis. Those emergencies. We want to have two key staff at least there in a reasonable salary. It doesn't have to be exorbitant. We can look online and find reasonable salaries. We did that. Two part-time employees who could be in sales and marketing and grant writing, making sure our productions and our programming are great. So that takes money, And currently our average monthly bills are about $7,000. And then you add in the staff, that comes to
Mhm.
about 22,000 a month. Now,
Okay.
similar public radio station that we all know well, theirs are triple that amount. So
Right.
this is not unreasonable. This is
Right.
not unreasonable for a business. And yes, it is a nonprofit based independent public radio station, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean it can't make a profit. Those
Right.
profits just go into the station and into the
That's
community.
right. Right.
And we can do things. If we can keep this going, we can not only be here as an emergency resource, but we can help with the community as far as training. We can teach podcasting, editing. We could teach a lot of different courses, and we could teach how to run a radio station, how to run a business. In fact, I've got a couple of new volunteers right now, and one of them is a 14-year-old young man who's so excited because he wants to learn how to do this. And he wants to learn all the aspects of not only running a radio station, but running a business. If we can get the community to help us and get new
Right.
sponsors and emergency funding, we can make this happen.
Would you tell viewers and the world out there who believe in KGUA and want to make it successful, how can they financially assist you? Where do they go to send some of their money?
If you would like to contribute to our effort to help us keep this station alive and thriving and vibrant for our community, then you can go to kgua.org. There are a couple of ways now, and I'll tell you that you can mail a check, you can bring in a check, but at our website, there is a donate tab where you can pay through PayPal. And there's also a way to donate a car if you would like, or a vehicle. It could be a boat. You could even donate stock. We've had somebody who donated Tesla stock. You can send in a check to P.O. Box 574, Gualala, California, and that's to Native Media Resource Center. Because right now, again, the nonprofit overseeing this
Right.
project, KGUA,
Right.
is NMRC. So write it out to NMRC.
The fastest way is to go to kgua.org and click on the donate button, and there's several ways you can do it there. You can mail a check to the address you gave us, or if you want to come and visit at the radio station, you can come by during business hours, and someone can hand you a check if they wish to. So there's a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of ways to help out, aren't there?
And folks, this is our Hail Mary. This is that
Yeah.
Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
play football when I was young. I was actually a quarterback and a wide receiver too, but I know what it's like to try to throw that
Right.
Hail Mary pass.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Leanne, thank you so much. This is congratulations on taking the management role here and doing everything possible to keep KGUA going and to make it financially sustainable in the future. I've really enjoyed this time with you.
Well, thank you, George. And I just want to give one last shout out to some of our volunteers too. Jean Berry of the Sea Ranch, Roberta Chan, and Thane Frevold, even though he's no longer able to help us now, he was a backbone for us for the longest time. He was
That's
actually
great.
doing all the scheduling of the shows and such. And then I automated everything as much as possible. That was part of what I could do to keep this station going. So
Yeah,
there are a lot of other volunteers out there, that I'd like to say thank you to, and I'd like to welcome you back as a host.
sure.
Sometimes host whenever you can bring a great show in, and we've got a couple of other great local producers as well who are stepping up.
Wonderful. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We will be opening our checkbooks and together we're gonna see KGUA successful. Thanks so much, Leanne.
Thank you, George. Well, we just want to talk to everybody about what our Hail Mary plan is and what KGUA really is an independent public radio station. And Again, it's not part of NPR. We do not get funding from them. We do not get grants. But we can start applying for some grants. It just takes time and people. And our reach goes from Timber Cove along the coast up to Irish Beach, inland towards Healdsburg and Boonville. And we also have SoundCloud and YouTube channels that has its own reach. And that reach continues to reach people, and they will put it on their websites, and it spreads out in a variety of ways. And we're talking too now about doing podcasting, which when distributed gets out to all podcast platforms. This is a vital resource during emergencies, for one thing. We just did not want to let this, disappear after all the hard work that both Peggy and Susan have done. So one thing I'd like for Peggy and Susan right now is to talk about how much that we have done in the past when it comes to emergency situations in our area.
I've been in broadcasting for 50 years this year. And with all of that, having started at KPFA in Berkeley, going to National Public Radio, working for 2 Smithsonian museums, and then we ended up here. And I was working on a national project where we were helping an organization called the National Federation of Community Broadcasters, where a government agency that no longer exists was going to hand out for the last time in the United States an opportunity to start a FM station. And so I was part of this, working with groups all over the United States, including Native people. And this was what was part of what was known as the PTFP, the I forgot what the P is, Public Facilities Telecommunications Project. This project created a lot of public radio stations, public television stations, and some community media centers. So this was a really important project that several of us were involved in helping happen across the United States. So we also knew that at this point, this would be the last time in the United States that the ability to apply for a license for a non-commercial station would happen. In full power. So Susan and I talked to our board at that point, because at that point I was, as I say, working on the national level, helping people connect to these grants. And we talked to our local board for Native Media Resource Center and decided, well, we would also put in an application and got one of those. And Susan, do you remember, was it something like 400 stations were built? I think it was something like that across the United States. And of course, we had access to the best engineers, the best tower people, all the people that you need to build a station, because it's not enough just to get the license. You have to build the tower. You need engineers to figure out what the signal is going to be and the location of the station. So it was a long, long process. Which along the way, by the way, I got cancer, so we had to open up the station. I always say I came limping to open the station, which was true. But we got it on the air and slowly developed programming and slowly developed staff, all volunteer at this point. So having worked within the industry for all those years, I was able to start the station with the help of many program producers, content producers, engineers, the other kinds of federal agencies that you need in order to get to the point we're at now, where we can just say, we have a radio station turned to 88.3 and you can listen to it. Took a lot of steps to get to that point. Anyway, so we made it on the air. We've been working with volunteers for all these years, tried out slightly different formats, but I knew all along we wanted something similar to a public radio format, but not a full classical and not a full talk station, so somewhere in between. And that's how we ended up with what we have now. But also the other most important thing was community. It wasn't about me, it wasn't about Susan, it was about community. All the communities within this listening area, the Kashaya community, the Hispanic community, of course, the Native community, youth, what you would say makes up our population here. That was who we focused on. That was the purpose of all of this. It was not for us. It wasn't for our board. It was to bring communications, particularly in rural areas. Again, having been in the system for a very long time, I know how important it is when you have emergencies. So KGUA has been there when there were fires. I think it was the first big fire. We ended up sleeping on the floor
I was there.
in the station so that we could bring you as much information, all of our listeners, as much as possible. And so that continued on through other fires, and I can't remember what other I guess sometimes
Storms.
slides, whatever. So that was
And
amazing.
COVID too, we got a recommendation from the Sea Ranch Board thanking us for all of our efforts. And Peggy, there's another thing too, is that you worked hard to get streaming going. We're
Mhm.
online.
Right, right. Well, that was the other important part, to, again, reaching as many audiences as you can, because when streaming came along, that made it perfect for people who couldn't just turn on their radio at home or in their car. So with the internet, once again, we were able to attract wider audiences. So, it was an exciting time to be be a broadcaster at this point, and to take part in all of these innovations that were happening, not just in America, but around the world, all these communication efforts, and to work with all kinds of people who were developing these issues. So we did work with international broadcasters and lots of other people as we finally honed in and got little KGUA going on the air, and started with CDs. I used to sit at the station all day long and put CDs in, back, in and out, stay there and come on the air and say, "You're listening to KGUA 88.3 FM in Gualala every hour," until the evenings. Then we would just play, I think, classical or rock and roll the rest of the time. Little by little, developing content for the station, which now, as you know, has quite a bit of content, and working with other producers over the years. It sort of became a training ground on the national level for other national producers who came in and helped us or brought other people in to work at a small station, because we are a tiny rural station, but we can do so much in sharing information. We've been talking about emergency, that was number one, but also all the other fun stuff that we want to do. And again, community has been the key, not Peggy, not Susan. It's about you guys, community.
And I think that's what's so important about maintaining KGUA here on the coast is, even with all this great technology and the changes we've seen so fast, very quickly here on the coast and around the world, having a radio signal in those times of emergency is so important, because you can go in your car if there's no internet, if there's no electricity, you can turn on your radio signal. And because we're here local, like they said, they slept in the studio. Leanne was calling all around. I was running to gas stations and finding people that were sent up, I happen to know, from Healdsburg, looking for a place to stay. And other people are like, well, we have rooms, we have a studio. And there was no, major connector, because at the time, they didn't have the community center open. So a lot of people were coming to the radio station because they heard us live on air representing this particular part of the coast. And that is what is so important and why we're making these efforts here today. It's the programming's great. You get local voices, you get to know your community, but it's those cases that we really don't want to see happen that might happen and have happened in the past, that it's a vital resource to this coast.
You know, and even Ara wrote in today from Ara Chakrabarty, CEO of RCMS, and he said KGUA is a critical to the fabric of our community. RCMS's ability to communicate to the community is amplified by your station. So amplified.
Mhm.
And how many times did you have him on your show to talk, Peggy?
I think when Ara came here, he was on once a month for at least a year. I just felt like it, and he still comes on because our CMS is such a vital part of our community. And when they have new projects going, of course, now we have Mendonoma Health Alliance. We make sure that all of these community agencies, healthcare, education, whatever there is, to make sure everybody gets as much information as they can. But Ara has been great support. And if you're watching, Ara, hi. He said he'd be watching.
And so a couple different ways that we're coming together to try to keep the station going. That's what Leanne titles the Hail Mary, is one, reaching out to the different emergency prepared funds that they have throughout Sonoma, Mendocino. We are looking towards, community, some of the businesses, but right now is really tough because of inflation. So businesses don't have a lot of extra capital, but some do come forward and they support the shows, they support the station, and then it gives them some visibility as well. I've also created the northcoastlink.com as a local directory because I miss the Blue Book. I think all of us miss the Blue Book. So this was my idea for a local online Blue Book until we get the funding to have something printed so we can connect with our neighbors once again.
What's
the link? www.northcoastlink.com. 3 easy words to spell.
Yes, and one of the things she's doing too is helping us to redo all of our materials so that we have pitch materials to go outside of our area to some of the bigger cities, bigger businesses, so we can bring them in as sponsorships and underwriters, bigger foundations. But emergency funding, emergency preparedness funding from our local governments is something we're going after first. And we can always use help from our community too. That's one of the reasons why we're here today at Del Mar, to reach out and explain to the community, we need your help to make sure we can pay our monthly bills. And for the first time ever, actually pay staff, a couple of key staff, to be able to be there at the station, doing the programming, being there during emergencies. And that's one of the things that both Sevi and I have stepped up to try to do, to keep this going for our community, to keep the legacy that Peggy and Susan have built going for this community, for all the programming, for all the, the critical emergency response, all the volunteers that have, Peggy, you have really brought in a lot of volunteers from our community. Jean Berry here from the Sea Ranch, Thane Fervold from the Sea Ranch, and Roberta Chan, and how many others that you have brought in?
Well, over the years, those are some of the volunteers who help behind the scenes with getting programs ready. But other volunteers are program producers like Jeannie Jackson, wonderful show with Mendonoma Sightings. So a lot of people have come through, some have stayed over the years, sharing their programs, their expertise in whatever it is, which is, as I say, the role of community radio is not about me. It is about community and who has the information in the community that they want to share. Several of you in this audience have been on the air several times sharing information when it was critical information. We keep mentioning emergencies. There's so many kinds of emergencies that happen. The big ones, power's out, the roads are out, that happens. We have to make sure that people know how they can get there. And the great big
Mhm.
ones, when we had to let you know, as Sevi was referring to, what grocery stores are open, is the
Their gasoline.
ask, where can you get gas, all of those things.
What really it comes down to is being able to keep the station going, is being able to pay those monthly expenses. And it totals up to around $6,600 a month. You've got overhead, you've got utilities and rent in there. Plus you've got broadcasting fees. You've got expenses to keep that tower going. It's a 103-foot tower that runs 24/7, 365 days of the year. And during the summers, it gets very hot up there. As Susan will tell you, it takes a lot of AC to keep that cool.
Yeah, that runs 24/7 all year,
Mhm.
AC.
365 days a
Mhm.
year.
Yep.
And that 6,600 is just for overhead. That's all volunteers for all, I mean, Peggy and Susan have been like volunteers in their own business.
She's never been
for
paid.
years. Yeah.
So with paying staff, that raises the budget up to 20 to 22,000 a month. But that's only a third of what another public radio station here in our community in Mendocino County pays a month. That they're at 66,000 a month.
Mm.
So this is not an unreasonable thing to try to achieve, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't understand that, how much it really costs to run this place. It is a great passion and a great effort these two have gotten underway, and keep it going for the community is just going to take time, effort, people, and money.
And some of the things, if you don't have a lot of money to donate, we could really use your skills
Yes.
in researching and grant writing, if you know how to
Bringing in
apply.
new underwriters and sponsors.
I met several people today that are going to come in and use their voice. If you have a good voice, come in. We can record local ads and public service announcements. There's many ways that the community can turn around and help us so that we can continue our efforts in January.
But the bottom line is, we need money.
Yeah, I was just going to
That's
say
the
that,
bottom line.
that's what the meeting is, a lot of this meeting is about, because after all these years, Susan and I are stepping away. And we have helped keep that foundation going. But we're going to be gone from the station, I'll still do some occasional voicing, but that foundation that kept everything flowing is not going to be there.
Mhm.
And to carry on the station, to carry on the signal, wherever it's going to go in the future, they're going to need funding. They're going to need help, whether it's listener support, business support. And part of the thing, I was going to tell you this earlier, but when this whole concept of public radio and community radio happened in the 70s, part of the plan from the government was that you had to have community support. They did hand out money, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting didn't hand it out. You really had to work hard to qualify for it, for public radio, for public television, and media centers. But once you got going, part of the plan was you were going to go on the air and beg for it. PBS does that. We're supposed to do that. We do it from time to time. I will tell you, no one in the industry likes to do that. No one likes to go on and beg for money. And yet that was part of the government plan, that we would go on and listeners would just open up their pocketbooks and help us with our budgets on an annual basis. Well, of course, times change. That has happened a bit. Of course, a big station like KQED or WNYC in New York, they have a huge population to pull from. I mean, it doesn't amount to their full funding, but they have much more than tiny rural stations like ours. Other stations in other communities might have some other help from the government. We don't have any of that. So this is, as they were calling it, the Hail Mary. We are really down to the wire. Susan and I can no longer support the underpinnings of the station, and we are looking for help.
Yes, and not even the tribes are funding this, because I've had some people ask that, Peggy. And
Well, they always do. People always think, I'm an Indian, so the tribes are helping me. No, it doesn't work that way.
We're
Or
not a
can't you get the-
tribally owned station.
Huh?
We're not a tribally owned station.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that we've done, and we took like 4 to 5 months to do to bring down some of the cost, is to automate as much as possible so that we don't have to spend a lot of time doing the daily tedious stuff, downloading the shows, scheduling them into the automation software. We can actually automate all that stuff, except for the live shows that we do, the drift that Sevi does, and other shows that we're doing right now. That's not automated, but the rest can be, and that reduces our time doing that. So then we can do some fundraising, and we can bring in emergency funds, or we can bring in bigger sponsors from outside this area, write grants, help people like my neighbor over here, Laura Riddell, who's helping with some of the grants research. If you have skills like Sevi was saying to do some of this work, that helps us too. You know, if you can pitch businesses, or you can write grants, or you can help us with any productions, that will greatly help us continue.
And even if you don't have any experience, I'm a really good coach. So
Yes.
come on in.
She had no experience when she came
I
in.
had none. I just heard from 5 different people, you need to meet Peggy Berryhill. And then we ran into each other one day and I was like, hey, I'll help you out.
That's right.
And that was almost 10 years ago now. So I've seen her. I've seen her all work hard. Thanks to Leanne for the automation. That was a lot of technical work and, saves a lot of time and a lot of manpower. I mean, we would sit at the station the days that we covered from at least, 8 o'clock until noon or 1. And that's all volunteer hours. And now because of automation, we can go in 8 to 9, edit, and we're out of there by 11, unless there's something like an emergency going on, right?
Exactly, and I can even remote in on a program called Team Viewer and keep the station going, fix some things that may be wrong, or help somebody that needs some assistance. But that is all been volunteer. All of this time that we've been doing this has all been volunteer. I would love to continue doing that, but I can't. Sevi can't continue being a full-time volunteer. That's where we're else asking for the help, so that we can bring in the budget that would be able to pay for the expenses to run the station, and also key staff and some people to help us doing that pitching. Susan, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Oh, I was just, thinking about, all of us being volunteers all these years, willingly, of course.
Yes.
Because we're all into community service, but practical matter is that it's really hard to get people to volunteer these days, because a lot of people are having a really hard time. They need money. And I mean, we even had some high school kids come in. Phyllis Wade brought in a few high school kids, and Peggy spent a lot of time, her volunteer time, training them, and then they quit because they wanted to be paid for their time. The kids did. And so it's a different world, and we love to volunteer, but the practical matter is, these Sevi and Leanne are really dedicated to the station, but they don't want to do, and they can't do what Peggy and I have been doing for the last 13 years. And
We would welcome anybody else that
Yeah.
would want to step in and do what we're doing. If you want to volunteer and manage the station, come in. If you want to buy the station, go ahead and help us. I mean, we're open to all suggestions and ideas.
How much is the cost of the station? Not that I can write a check.
Well, that's what we were just talking about. Monthly bills are about $6,600 a month, and we've been reducing some of that. We got like $300 trade in on the rent. We cut down some of the online directory, which is part of our streaming service, cut by about $400.
Are you're
this year.
talking about the signal?
you're talking
Oh,
about
about the signal.
The license. You're
talking about the license. There's
Okay, I
all
gotcha.
different, there's all different packages for that. There is, the license, the equipment, the tower. And we're working with a broker, so I really can't talk about any of that. You'd have to talk to the broker. But yeah, but it's, there's all different packages. Yeah.
It would be a good idea, is it $200,000 or $2 million?
Right. No, not that much. No.
The small
You're,
station.
you're starting well under $100,000 and yeah, and I would say the high end would probably be somewhere around $500,000. But no, and there's all gradations in between.
We're not talking about millions of dollars.
No, and I did pay to start and establish a nonprofit in the case.
Profit in the case
Make it
could make it
profitable enough.
profitable enough to be able to pay us and pay the bills,
Then I
then
can
I
do
could do
that.
that
But I'm happy for anybody else to step up and
and do this.
Or a couple angel donors would be nice.
Right.
too.
You do have to be a nonprofit
But you
in
do have
order
to be
to
a
run,
nonprofit.
in order to get a license for a public station. Part of the issue is that we've generally had like two people trying to do everything. Go in the air, work with the engineering, try and, sell ads. I think if we had a dedicated salesperson, of course, now
Like
you look,
KZYX does.
look at the small geographic area we're working with, but who could go beyond that? Go with the reaches of our signal and also understanding that we're on streaming, which makes us global. So the problem is you've had one or two of us at a time trying to do everything. And so that, of course, the most successful thing we've done is keep it going, the signal and going on the air. So that's really the issue. I mean, because we haven't been able to pay a professional fundraiser or, someone to sell advertising full time. It's just sort of been honestly haphazard.
And even just a reasonable salary, that for two people and two part-timers, 4 people, that you're looking at about 22,000 a month. So that, but again, KZYX is up at 66,000 a month. And they just spent, I think they're spending about 2 million on a new office.
They're in a very different,
They're very
they're in a
different.
very
Very
different
different.
area than we are. They can qualify for CPB funding. They can do a lot of things that
Yes,
we
we
can't
can.
do. Right.
However,
Explain that about CPB funding.
Well, I believe, and Peggy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to qualify now for CPB funding, I believe you have to raise 400,000 out of your community to qualify for like a $40,000 grant.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
CPB means the Corporation for
Yeah,
Public
sorry.
Broadcasting. You see that all the time at the end of programs. This on TV, PBS, of course, Public Broadcasting System. This program brought to you by CPB. You see that logo, or you might have a voice telling you it's CPB. So at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which I've been to many times, many meetings, been on different boards for the organization. Again, part that was built into this whole thing about public broadcasting was getting money from the community, and CPB will give funds, but you do have to raise a certain amount. And in the case of our station, it was,
Well, I think
I
it's
can't remember.
400,000. And,
Yeah,
and you see, and why KZYX, who is, they're friends of ours, they're up in Philo, they have 3 stations and they cover a much wider area. They have a much larger terrestrial listening population.
and obviously people
Yeah.
like KQED,
Mhm.
right in the Bay Area, have millions of people.
Or-
They
yeah.
have businesses, all of that to choose from. But we all know the reality of where we live here on the coast,
Yep.
the population and the businesses.
mm,
And with the COVID, the businesses, everybody had a terrible time and is still trying to recover from that. So you're probably wondering, why in the world did they even start this station?
but I will say one thing to answer another potential to your question is our demographics have changed here at Sea Ranch. And so if we can express that demographic to other companies, like I have The Drift, which is a travel show, about local people and their journeys. So you could reach out to more corporate people that have that kind of money if we're able to show them the demographics. And a lot of people throughout Sea Ranch have those relationships with people that have these giant corporations that have to give so much money at the end of the year. So it could very well be sustainable. It's not a lot of money.
One of the different shows that we're doing to reach bigger businesses is Resilient Earth Radio, and that's finding out what are the positive things that people are doing around our planet. And we've had some great people, one of whom has been a friend of Susan's and Peggy's for a long time. He's a senior fellow with the Ocean Foundation, and that's Richard Charter. And he came on just recently to talk about deep sea mining, which is a real problem right now. But we can get bigger sponsors and foundations to come in, one of which, the two that I'm connecting with, is Dr. Sylvia Earle's Blue Mission, or Mission Blue. The other one is Blue Frontier, and Blue Frontier has a podcast called Rising Tide. But we create these, alliances with these other organizations. They can help share our shows. We get a bigger reach. They put it on their websites, and then we can get in bigger sponsors, maybe Microsoft and other funders. But it takes time, it takes people, it takes that dedication. And again, we're welcome for other people to come in and help us. So did you have a question? Oh, okay.
Well, and I think you can hear from what we're talking about. We are reaching out, using our connections to many, many different communities. You know, at a station like KQED, of course, they've got a whole office of people and an army of people that can go out and look for all of these funders. KZYX has some money to do that as well. But we have to use our own resources, and it's tough. It's tough sledding. That's all I can tell you. It's very, very hard to do that.
So Jill Nussenow asked, what is the actual reach numbers for the terrestrial from Timber Cove to Irish Beach and inland towards Healdsburg and Boonville? And that would take a lot of money for us to do a report like that. What we can see are, when we look at our digital numbers for streaming, we can see where these people are around the world and who's listening in. But Peggy, actually, you had talked to one of the attorneys who said that he had looked at the morning show once and seen a certain number of listeners.
Several thousand listeners for Peggy's Place, which was woo-hoo, pretty exciting. But the other thing is, we mentioned attorneys. It takes so many pieces to keep a station going. So having attorneys, and particularly broadcast attorneys, that's another annual cost, and that keep us, make sure we're legal, or if anything changes with the FCC, all of these things. Running a station, the background of it is just, it's a lot of record keeping, a lot of staying in touch, a lot of keeping.
And we put a lot of time into doing the software programs that run this station and do the report. We can do reporting to NPR that shows the music that we've played, or there any of the music that we need to pay royalties on even. So we do that too, quarterly reports.
And to go back to your question really quick, because we do stream live, a lot of people I talk to, this is their second homes. They'll live in LA, they'll live all over Sacramento. They'll tune in to the station through the app on the phone. They can listen to it like a podcast through their sound system. And that's what they do. I'll get calls from all over saying, hey, we heard, your interview with Donna Bishop today, or Marion Patterson. I got so many responses from hers when we recorded with her a couple months ago. So people do listen. There's still a good listenership to KGUA.
Yeah, if you can see on the phone right there, it's kind of blurry, but it's an app that KGUA you download from our website. You go to kgua.org, you click listen live. You can download that app to any digital device. We can send out emergency alerts on this app. And if I open it up, you'd be able to see down here, there's an emergency alert, or we could put a sponsor there. You had a question, Paula?
Yeah, hi.
I don't know if they can
Is
hear
there-
you on that mic.
I don't know if, can you?
Why don't you come over on this mic, Paula? So this is Paula Smith.
Longtime
Longtime
supporter.
Glad to help, and I think you've underestimated how much you do. I know I've come on and talked about important issues for voting in the community, and you're good on that. My question is, If someone else bought you, like another radio station, you said you tried, would you still have some autonomy? Like if KQED bought you, would they switch to their format?
Be a repeater.
This is why we had negotiations with KZYX, who's our nearby public station.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. And that's what they wanted to do. And so other than the fact that they didn't want to keep a studio here, they just wanted to repeat their programming. And we talked to a lot of people in the community. Everyone was excited that we mentioned too that KZYX might be interested in buying the license.
I was excited.
And then when we got into the nitty gritty of the details, then people said, no, we really, can't you just keep it here? But I don't know, it may come to that.
They have great programming. However, during times of emergency, they're so far away. It's removed from our reality
But
here. on the-
it's possible that, as Sevi was just mentioning, that with a community station like KZYX that we have a friendship with, that there might be, particularly when there's emergencies, that they're going to just let us run with it. They're not going to get in the way and tell us what's going on 101. So that's always possible when you get into negotiating with people. And that is certainly what we would fight for. They might keep a morning show going. I mean, it depends upon all of this, how it's going, but every organization has its own board. KZYX has how many board members?
They have a 10-person board. Yeah, with too many people.
And I have stepped up because I'm one that has a lot of the skills to run the station. I've been here with Sevi for a long time as volunteer. I've asked her to come and help me with this. If we can make this sustainable, if we can make it profitable through our efforts to go out and get emergency funding, to get grants, to get bigger sponsors and produce podcasts, that shows that we're doing live, we can package those into the podcast format, put those out on all platforms. We extend our reach. We'll get bigger sponsors. We can bring that money in. We're trying to see if we can do that. We have a short runway. And if we could, then I have a nonprofit. I would take over the license and the depreciated equipment, lease from the tower, from NMRC. That's how I would do it. But I'm open to other people with a better idea.
I think the thing that, you guys need to know is Sevi and Leanne have the skills and the experience to totally take over the station.
We just don't have the money.
Right. Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the question was, we have like a list of action items that people could help with? And we do. We have a business plan in essence that says, here are the things that we need to do to bring this money in. We have been asking if there are grant writers out there to help us and other people. It hasn't been that easy, but we'd love to have your help. And anybody else that wants to pitch businesses to do advertising on our station. It's a public radio station. We call it sponsorships and underwriting, but also to reach out to the local governments and get emergency funding. We've got the plan.
Yeah, I think everything
Debbie and
would
I
be
can do that.
based on an individual's skills. You come give us a call, 884-4883, send us an email, and we can link up with you. If you have stuff to share, we can interview you. We can send you out in the world to try to help us. And if you're an angel donor,
Well,
That's
and that's
great too.
and that's really the bottom line, because we've been doing this a long time, and money is really the bottom line here. Again.
Sponsorship, I'm sorry, I didn't, there's a difference between a sponsorship, which can be a long runway, and it might be monthly, it might be quarterly, it might be a
annual.
one-time. And between getting regular advertisers, sponsors on the station, that's another, looking at those channels of how the money comes in order to keep everything going. Grant writing is great. But you have a long wait to
Yes.
find out if you're actually going to get any money or if you're going to get that call that says, sorry, not this time, which we've gotten a lot of those. So all of these avenues, with people who had the expertise to help explore the different avenues for us, sure, that would be fantastic.
And we have Seuss from Gualala Arts Center who walked in the other day. He really wanted to do a joint sponsorship with us again. So we're doing a trade, but that helps us expand awareness, raise that attention on both of us so we can do that. Micheline at MHA just said last night she wants to do a package with us for 4 months. So we're doing a package with Mendocino Health Alliance. They've been coming on our show once a month to spread information about how they help the community. That's a local. Yes, we can work with local too. You had a question in the back. Tsrf is one of our best sponsors.
Surf is one of
But
our
we don't
biggest
have
sponsors.
a lot. It's me, it's Sevi, it's Peggy. That's,
So-
and we have other volunteers who help with other things, but no salespeople.
And that's another way for everybody listening and for you all to help out. If you have relationships, it's all about relationships and community. So if you have relationships with anybody here or any other businesses outside our community that
Absolutely.
can benefit from the listenership in our community, that's what it's all about. It's all about relationships. It's all about spreading the word, and we'll work with, whoever comes our way.
Mary Mackey. And she's asking, how much would it cost to send out a mass mailer?
We can ask the ladies that are Get Out the Vote. They do that right now with the voting postcards. I see them at Sea Ranch. I can look into that. I'm not quite sure. The price of stamps has gone up, and then you got to think of how many people in the area live here.
We've tried many things over the years, and, some have been fruitful, others have not. We used to do a lot of events when Margie Hagan lived here.
Right.
I think Leanne mentioned her.
And at the lodge back when we had
Yeah,
the
and
chefs that we were
at the
friends
lodge.
with.
And, some things are really good to do. Other things are really a lot of work for not much. So, we've been doing this for 13 years, so we kind of know what has been working and what has not. And, what these guys are trying to do is reach out to a outside of the area audience to try to get more funds.
And tell the new people
Yeah.
here at Sea
And to the new
Ranch.
people,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that we wouldn't do another mass
Exactly,
mailing.
yeah.
With the help of someone to do that, because, it's a different time. We have different people here. So, what didn't work in the past might work or might be marginally better, whatever, it could help. So we're not saying things that we've done before, we're not going to try again.
That's true. That's true. I'm glad you mentioned that,
Yeah.
Peggy. I wasn't trying to say we wouldn't do it again, but we've done it before. Yeah.
Mary,
Making
you
it
had another question? We have some that could be put up, as a matter of fact. We printed
That
them
would
through,
work.
through Vistaprint. That would be a great idea.
Mhm.
So if you want to volunteer, I think that's the bottom line question, or if you, in any capacity, come see us. You can write to us at kguafm@gmail.com. You can call us at 707-884-4883. And you can come and see us after this thing finishes too. So
I think most of you know where the office is, right? Cypress Village, just right on the corner, next to Healing Arts. And
attractions, the
Yeah.
hair salon.
And Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings around 10 after Peggy's, after the morning show is a good time to come by.
Yeah. After we're off the air. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, I think that Linda McCabe of the Sea Ranch Forum, thank you for inviting us to be here today and giving us an opportunity to talk to the community about this.
Absolutely. Oh, good. I did get it back up. Sorry, I was. So, thank you, everyone here. And you can also sign up on the Sea Ranch Forum mailing list, and there's a box where you can check, I want to help KGUA, and then I will forward your email information to Leanne. This is recorded and it will be available on YouTube later, so you can share it with your friends so they can see this. And I hope there weren't too many technical glitches with sound and such, but I'm also a volunteer. So,
Thank you for having us here. We
Thank
really
you, Linda.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I know that Leanne is planning on being at the safety forum next Saturday. That's going to be at the Nip Stengel Barn regarding fire and safety. So she will be there as well. And I wanted to say our next forum will be on a Sunday, August 18th. It's also about public safety and our local airports. And that will be from 3 to 5. And one more thing before we leave, a tradition for the Sea Ranch Forum is that we put the chairs away. So it makes it easier for our facilities and resources staff.
And thanks to everybody that came in on Zoom. We
Yes.
appreciate it. Everybody that showed up here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mhm.
What else did you say?
Thank you.
And I'm going to end the meeting for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.